Commander Moto Charge Calling got a huge number of buffs going into this Torchlight Infinite season, and I am super excited to say that his performance has been even better than I expected. This build is an insane season starter. You walk through the entire campaign, barely having to hit any buttons aside of movement skills, and then you walk straight to Time Mark 7, smash Traveler in the face, pretty much just using trash from the floor and a few things you can pick up from the trade house, and then you're pretty much ready to walk into Time Mark 8 and begin farming. But that said, my gear is far from min-maxed, so if you want to see what a min-maxed version of his build can truly do be sure to get subscribed. Don't forget to ring that notification bell, that way you can come back later and see the full version of a build after I finish testing everything. This is just my day 1 gear, what was a super solid starter that took me all the way into Time Mark 8 under 24 hours after the season released. But before I get into things, a quick moment to thank this video's sponsor, XD. They are yet again helping to ensure that the community has builds to follow and a variety of other resources, so big thanks to them. If you want to check out the season, you can do so using my link down below. And then don't forget to play Moto Charge Calling, because he is truly awesome. Or if you really don't like minions, well, maybe check out my best starters video for some other ideas of what you can play. And for my early gearing, I focused on 2 things. Number 1, I'm lazy, so I didn't really want to do a bunch of crafting, swap a bunch of items, so I basically just stuck with a Voyager set and a few key legendaries that I could target using the Legendary Vision event. 2, I focused on mobility over damage. This build is far from optimized for damage, but the damage has been completely fine for all the content I've put it up against. The plan of the future is to scale more damage while continuing to min-max the build. In terms of performance, Time Mark 7 already completely cleared. Time Mark 7 bosses, they melt in seconds. Time Mark 8, I will admit, squishiness has been a slight problem. Working on that, doing a little bit here and there to get a bigger health pool up, maybe craft some more life on other legendaries. But in terms of damage, again, totally fine, could even do things like add compasses and do triple S-rank Clockwork Ballet encounters. Oh, and Traveler, absolute breeze. The phases just practically melted away. So with that said, let's get into the skills, talents, divinity slates, hero traits, hero items, everything about the build, gear and crafting, how I've been playing it, and much more. Alright, so first up, let's look at some skills. Now keep in mind this is very early on, so I've only allocated 325 energy because I wanted a little room to swap gear pieces out, especially as I'm dropping my 4-piece bonus. Also, I don't have a soul candle yet, just because I have plenty of damage and I was too lazy to go do City of Eterna. But first up, we've got Summon Grim Phantom. This is to fully automate the build. I'm pretty sure long term I'm going to swap to either Summon Machine Guards or Summon Spider Tanks, but for now, Summon Grim Phantom fully automates and it has more than enough damage to absolutely obliterate T7 and easily farm T80. Because it converts damage over to lightning, of course, I'm going with Elemental Fusion. This is what you want to use, and you also want to pair it with Lightning Pen. Then there's Precision Strike. This lowers skill area of effect in exchange for adding attack speed and damage. Mechanical Modification basically limits you to 3 minions, which is perfect because you summon 3 at once anyway, in exchange for giving them way more life and damage, which is way more damage and damage, because minion life is minion damage, and I absolutely suggest using Mechanical Modification if you are playing this build, even if you are not using it for other builds. Then last up, Steamroll, which I've gone back and forth on, because on the one hand, it's a good amount of area, good amount of damage. Yes, melee damage. This is a melee skill triggered by a spell. Welcome to Charge Calling. But also, the minus additional attack speed, I felt it at low levels. Now that I have more stats overall, I don't feel it so much. Moving on, we've got Compound Source. This is just the default healing setup that I use on a lot of characters. Adding Auto Charge to be lazy, you're going to hear that a lot. Adding Limber Stretch, so I get free move speed, and adding Residues, so the move speed stays active. For movement, this is why I'm using 2 swords. I wanted to go Leap Attack. You can either go Mark or Harden. For the rest, it's all just about mobility. Then for additional damage scaling, I've got Electrocute here, automated via Preparation. And I've got Elemental Shock, automated via Preparation. That way, I don't have to hit these buttons. Just every 8 seconds, I get some buffs. It's not perfect. Actually, hard casting Elemental Shock is far more beneficial if you want to min-max, but I'm lazy, so I use Preparation. Now for auras, right now I'm going Fearless for additional melee crit strike and additional melee skill damage and additional melee skill area. I have also been trying some weapon amplification. That's why I have some half-leveled auras here for just the additional fizz damage. Right now, I like the feel of this one better with the additional AoE. If my damage starts to struggle, then maybe I'll go with something else. Then we've got Electric Conversion here, because Electric Conversion, really nice damage aura. Of course, always use Aura Amplification everywhere. It has no mana cost multiplier, and it gives you extra bonus. Plus, it helps make sure that your minions are always in your aura. On Fearless, there's also Selfless. The aura does not need to affect me, the player character. The aura does need to affect the enemies. Sometimes you will actually want additional melee crit strike damage to affect you if you have a way to transfer your melee crit strike chance or damage to your minions. So Selfless is not always a play, but in this case, no Warden's Breastpin, so it's very much of a play. Then Rejuvenation, just to have some nice life recovery. This should eventually be swapped out, but right now it's totally fine. And Elemental Resistance, which also should probably be swapped out long term. I don't think this is a use forever kind of aura, but it's really nice to help cap those resistances for Time Mark 8. In terms of a couple alternatives, Energy Fortress comes to mind, especially after you go low life. If you go low life, Weapon Amp would be more damage. And if you want more movement speed, there we go, Swiftness, same icon. Swiftness, a little more movement speed for more mobility. On the other hand, if you want even more mobility on your leap attack, just go summon Thunder Spirit for the attack and cast speed. Next up, we've got talents. And honestly, if you want a very quick and lazy TLDR, I copied everything in Zen's guide, and I'll make tweaks based on my personal preference later. But coming through here, what are a couple of key things? Well, the main key thing is get minion skill level. Minion skill level is really important. Also, if you have played Moto in the past, especially if you have played Charge Calling in the past, another key difference is you want minion attack and cast speed now, because this is applied to the charge, and it definitely makes it feel more responsive. So, a good bit of this, and especially the player attack and cast speed, minion attack and cast speed nodes, are going to be a good late game investment. That is, in fact, the only place where I've made a slight variation from Zen's plan. Then we've also got Mighty Guard with, minion skill level. Really, it's just for minion skill level. If you're too overloaded on this, I think long-term the thing to do is Isomorphic Arms, because it's additional attack and cast speed and all of the main weapon bonuses. This requires a big old two-handed mace, so starting, not good, especially since my weapons basically do nothing damage-wise. They're just for mobility. Long-term, very, very good option. I highly recommend going Isomorphic Arms. Then under Machinist, basically same thing. Just getting the crit, the attack and cast speed, not focusing quite as much on defensive stuff. Like, there's a lot of defensive stuff that if you feel squishy, you can pick up. A little bit of life regen. Of course, this node, insane while leveling, stays pretty solid later. And there's even some minion aura effect, i.e. the effect of your auras on your minions. Then, of course, the synthetic troop level. This is pretty much interchangeable with minion skill level. So when you're looking for stuff like slates, just get either one. And we've got boss here. The +1, quite handy early on, and then 18% chance to deal double damage. There's nothing else too impressive here. Like, you could get Broken Shell for bosses, but overall I'd just keep boss. However, I would very strongly recommend Kinetic Conversion. I've been a big fan of this talent for a very long time. You will not need the damage from Burning Aggression. You will want the extra defenses and the 20% additional minus damage taken, so damage reduction while moving. Then last up, Steel Vanguard. Really nice defensive talent tree. So, first up, go all the way through here. I do take the attack and cast speed / minion attack and cast speed, just because A, better mobility for my character means I can clear maps faster, and also, again, this makes things more responsive. I think technically the Empower skill is slightly more damage, but that's okay. I'm just going to level up 3 more times and by 95 have both anyway. Something else that I personally really like is this talent for own an additional stack of every blessing. The focus doesn't really matter right now, but the agility and tenacity are quite nice. Aside of that, the aura effect really good because you're using a bunch of auras. Cooldown recovery speed also really good. Skill effect duration keeps stuff active more. You're also in here for reflection. The plus 20% sealed mana does indeed make it harder to keep all of your auras active. So just keep that in mind. But there aren't too many options here. Resistance is fine against elemental damage. However, you're going to barely be capping at low levels anyway, so it's not super relevant. And this is why the Empower skill effect isn't super important. You already get 55% from Knowledgeable. So then in terms of a new god slates, I just bought really cheap ones and put nodes on them. So plus minion skill level. That's all I looked for here. And then there's this one that I found that I never bothered to fix because it wasn't that relevant. Minion skill level, minion skill level, minion skill level. You can go with synthetic troop over minion. And then I just brand them up to add pretty much anything. I just took the first thing that it gave me. So let's go to the trade house real quick. And I can show you what sort of slates to look for. I've got Divinity Slate. This has to be in God of Machines. You can either do synthetic troop skill level or minion skill level. Again, pretty much functionally the same. There's some slight differences on your empower skills that make minion skill better, but we're going for cheap here. This is early on. These tend to be cheaper. There you go. 5 FE. I have for 5 FE. Oh, item expired. That's unfortunate. All right, look. 10 FE. There we go. 10 FE. I've now bought a new Divinity Slate with plus skill level. In this case, synthetic troop. Then just come over here. Statue of a new god. It's pretty much correct anyway. Unequip the old one. Equip the new one. Adjust shape. Rotate. Cool. Perfect. Now, add a talent node. There we go. Minion attack and cast speed. Perfect. Add a talent node. Brand it up. Movement speed per minion nearby. Cool. Empty talent node. Add sentry skill area, whatever. Minion attack and cast speed. Cool. That's all you do. Now, at least currently, I bought most of mine for between 5 and 15 FE, but prices vary over time. Don't expect that your Divinity Slates are going to cost exactly as much as mine did. Though I think for these, given how common they are, in general, the price is going to trend down, especially if they don't have legendary slots or other useful modifiers. And speaking of not having useful modifiers, let's take a look at my hero relics and memories. Spoiler alert, they're atrocious. For hero traits, you have to take Surprise Force, you have to take Preparation. Personally, I would not recommend going actual Exploding Moto until you are level 60 and have access to Preparation, just because this makes it feel way better. That said, in terms of quick battle versus concentrated fire, I'm going to tell you right now that the 50% secondary physical damage sounds cool and sounds like a lot, but 50% of base life gives you so much more scaling. This is actually insane. Plus, having the synthetic troops automatically gain overload, really nice quality of life. So, quick battle all the way. Then from there, guerrilla tactics. Don't worry about this part. This part isn't important. These parts are important. You collect parts, and you get massive damage bonuses and even bigger skill AoE. More AoE means more booms covering your screen and bits of enemies. And loot, which also might be bits of enemies. Let me know down in the comments if you think loot is just bits of enemies. Now last up, the better talent to activate is Heroic Sacrifice. The reason that I have Fuel War with War active is because I purchased Dominion of the Iron Pack prototype. Now, the price of this is going to vary, and the roll varies from -20 to -30% additional minion damage. Try to get one that's a lower roll, but also don't spend too much on this. As you can see, some of the lower rolls, especially, in this case, the higher, i.e. 30% ones, very, very cheap. You should be able to pick this up quite easily on the trade house. That said, the full version that doesn't have this penalty, quite expensive, and closer to 20% rolls, they're going to get a bit pricey. So while that does matter to an extent when you're just starting out, any roll of this is totally fine. Try to keep it affordable. And again, also remember, prices shift over time. And for these, you can either buy them or you can just drop them. Half the time you'll just drop them, but adds physical damage for every minion max life. This is really, really good. It scales the damage on your explosions and you're already stacking life. So this is effectively double dipping. And then you just want things like adds a % of player's max life to minion life, additional damage triggered by self-destruct protocol, maybe even a little move speed. Minion attack and cast speed's fine, minion life is fine, but try to get one of the 2 good mods, and realistically anything else, whatever you drop. And hey, if you want to drop some really good stuff, maybe get the full version of this, which last I checked was like 1,000 FE. Personally, I don't think it's worth 1,000 FE early on. It's nice damage, but you're totally fine on damage. Well, maybe consider farming some Black Sail so that you can drop it for yourself. Then last up, Packed Spirits. What am I using? Loot stuff. Basically just loot pets. So, the gearing approach here has been threefold. Number 1, cap resistances to not die. Number 2, get life to not die. Number 3, get all sorts of damage stats after the first two things. So this has resulted in a good bit of intelligence, useful because this adds 0.5% damage to the summoned Grim Phantoms, incredible DPS for the level of investment, and pretty close on resistances, okay on life, definitely feeling a little towards the squishy end in Time Mark 8, totally chill in Time Mark 7. So, couple things. Fiend Crown. This will drop all the time, usually with 0 to 1 legendary aptitude. All you have to do is go into the legendary vision event and set it to drop. You'll get so many of these, it's really easy to equip. What you want is the minions gain lucky on critical strike. This helps minions get a lot more consistent damage. Next up, the Voyager set. And this is primarily for the 2 and 4 piece bonus. 6 piece, you know what, it's fine, but realistically, the command is never going to stack high enough to be relevant. You do want the Overload cooldown recovery speed. This, especially early on, very much helps to scale your damage. And you want the 15% all res. The additional damage bonus is nice, but certainly not required. The best way to get this is, let's come over here and go look at the Void chart. So, in here, in your Void chart, in your talent constellation for legendary gear, this setup here, medium node, gives bosses a chance to drop it. This makes it drop in your stages. You will get so many pieces that you will eventually go, wait, I don't need this anymore. I want to start hiding it on my filter. I swear, some maps I was getting 4 or 5 each. So, early on, when you want to collect your Voyager set, spec both of those. By Time Mark 7, you'll be able to spec out of it no problem. By the way, if you want to know what I'm doing, how I'm farming stuff, Void chart, video soon. Just need to test a few more things because I'm not sure if all my choices are optimal. But don't worry, get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there. Stay tuned for future videos on that. For now, let's go back to how I'm building my character. So back here, the belt, again, it's just Voyagers. Rings, just Voyagers. Gloves, just Voyagers. Right now, one of these could easily be replaced with something else, like a Decayed Mind and Going Spider Tanks, like a Winter of Origin, which is also quite expensive. That's why I haven't replaced it, because I don't have the money, because I'm poor. For chest piece, I strongly recommend Heavyware. First of all, you get damage reduction. I know it doesn't say that, but it does actually do that. This chest piece reduces your damage taken from enemies in proximity and increases your damage dealt to them. And because I happen to get so many of them, I've just been throwing my Emberon cores, and I got pretty lucky and elevated it to T0. Maybe I could even do some aptitude inheritance later and put some actually sick mods on this. Because I'm going to be honest, these mods, they're not super sick. I didn't really invest too much in it. I just tossed cores at it, you know, cheap stuff, relatively easy investment. You can do the same for the Fiend Crown, but you do actually have a little bit harder time getting legendary aptitude here. Lots of LA2s. This, it's more of LA1, LA0, so mods are very limited. Now, another thing that you get tons of LA2s for is Mind Infusion. Basically, this is just for minion skill level. I did the same thing. I just kept corroding them until I hit what I wanted. And so, yeah, +2 minion skill level, really nice boost. This, I'm not even using that much, to be honest, because half the time I forget to cast it. And yes, you do have to manually cast your Empower skill to trigger this. So as you can see, gearing is very, very simple. In terms of crafting, honestly, it should just be life and res. That's all these items really need. I've just been lazy about fully crafting them because I haven't been dying. Now, weapons. This is the slightly more important part. These hero longswords are not particularly good for damage. That's not the point. Pretty much any caster weapon, like a big old 200 mace, some wands, that will be better for your damage. But this build doesn't need damage. This build needs mobility. You are often very slow and it feels bad. So, these swords have high APS, meaning your leap attack, or spiral strike if you prefer, is a lot more responsive. The two stats you look for: your attack speed, ideally T1, and intelligence, ideally Tier 1, because this applies multiplicative damage, which helps to scale your Grim Phantoms, and thus scales the explosion when they blow themselves up with self-destruct protocol. But in general, all the stats are good, and this build scales incredibly hard, so damage isn't really going to be relevant until you start progressing in Time Mark 8. Before that, you just walk through stuff and focus on speed. Now I know between the talents, traits, and hero items, that's probably a lot to follow. So if you want to follow along or have a quick reference, then head over to Maxwell GG, where you're going to find my character public in the builder. Or you can join my Discord, hop in, check the build archive channel, I'll also have it linked there. Alright, so how has the build played so far? While leveling, I did not go the exploding minion route. This is just because Exploding minion can be a little bit inconsistent and actually lead to a damage loss at very low levels. You're not able to consistently summon 3 minions, you're not able to generate mechanical parts, and especially before level 45, personally, I find it feels a little bit janky. That said, it is also personal preference. If you're not worried about leveling the fastest or the most efficiently, and you just want to see your minions go boom, you're not going to have a terrible time. Go for it. Now, once I hit early time marks, which you can see from my stream, I'll link it up in the card and down below, I really focused on getting the Voyager set, not only because the set bonus is nice, but because the pieces are just really good. They all have life on them, they all have resistance on them. And when you combine life and resistance, that's really all you need in the early game. This will carry you all the way up to time mark 7 very easily. At this point, I'm pretty sure, with a full set of Voyager gear, or at the very least a 4-piece, heavy wear, mind infusion, and 2 random interlocking souls, you'd have more than enough damage and more than enough defenses to do everything into time mark 7. Until you're level 82, you won't be able to get the Fiend Crown, so don't worry about it, just use a Voyager helmet. That said, in terms of interlocking soul, while you do negate the downside, you don't lose life because you're not using minion skills, they're using themselves automatically. I would actually recommend not using those, just because, like I explained in the gearing section, having a hero longsword or any other high APS based sword is much better from a quality of life / feels good standpoint. But as long as you're able to get enough life, like 3 to 4k, cap your res, damage will not be a problem. I remember walking over to the dummy right before I walked into T7 Traveler. I remember after doing T7 Traveler, I walked over to the dummy and I was doing about 2 billion DPS. Since then, I have made a couple of tweaks to my gear, one of which was corroding more heavy wares and mind infusions. I got 2 corrosions there. Also, filling out proper Divinity slates, hero relics, and memories. I didn't have all of that stuff in place when I first killed T7 Traveler. Now, unfortunately, Hands of a Mage Assistant are no longer a thing, so you no longer get free attack speed on your leap attack. This is why scaling attack speed and using high APS weapons is important. Commander Moto Charge Calling has pretty much infinite damage at low levels and easily outscales the content. What he needs help with is mobility, i.e. attack speed and movement speed. So, focus on movement speed on boots, focus on attack speed on weapons, and you should have a pretty good time. And so from here, what's my plan? First up, I plan to farm in time mark 8 and experiment a bit with a void chart. Also, in terms of farming content, the main goal is going to be a Winter of Origin, which last I checked was a few hundred FE. So there's going to be a little bit of saving involved there. Winter of Origin should be an absolutely massive damage boost, even if it doesn't have good crafted modifiers. Then from there, the plan is probably to slowly replace the Voyager's pieces with either other legendaries or crafted gear, and really focus on defenses, try to get up to at least 5,000, maybe even 6,000 maximum life, maybe get some maximum life on Divinity slates, all that fun stuff, which should make the defenses feel a lot better, and of course, continue to scale the damage because you transfer a portion of your base life over to your minions, which then gets applied to self-destruct protocol. Then, in terms of long-term viability, will this character keep scaling? Yes, absolutely. But again, if you want to know more about that, you're going to have to follow along with my journey and look out for future videos. With that said, if you want to see how I leveled, I'll leave a VOD up in the card and down below. I'll leave my best starters video in case you want to play something else. And if you want to know a guide on how to do this a proper way, rather than the janky stuff that I did while leveling, well, check out Zen's guide over on Maxroll, which I'll also link down in the description. Another big thanks to XD for sponsoring this video, helping to ensure the community has high quality resources. If you haven't already, then do be sure to check out the Torchlight Infinite Clockwork Ballet season using my link below, helps to support the channel. And for those of you that have already checked out Clockwork Ballet, I'm just going to leave you with a question. What do you think of the season and the general progression process? Have you already started leveling? Are you in the Nether Realm? Let me know some thoughts down below. Of course, before I go, a big thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make sure videos like this are possible. And of course, a big thanks to everyone who watched to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I hope you follow along as I continue my min-max journey. And so with that, I'll see you in the next video.